Hello, my name is Brandi Hofer, your host and founder of Color Me Happy, a community podcast and book, all of which I started in my in-home studio whilst in the throes of motherhood. I am an artist, author, educator, and mother to 3 beautiful boys. We live and create together in our in-home studio that is tucked away in the quiet Canadian prairies. Our podcast and community was built to empower and inspire. We chat about everything from motherhood, the art world, business, and health in the most honest and authentic way. It's totally unedited and unfiltered. If you love what we do here, become a part of our free community, Color Me Happy. We have grown the community to support our members with features and interviews. Our link is in the notes. Thank you for being here. I sure do appreciate your time. Hello, welcome to Color Me Happy. My name is Brandi Hofer. Thank you so much for joining. I sure do appreciate your time. This week we have Braden on, and he shares his story with Inuit culture, and he's also a video creator. I'd say that's where he grew his big followship. Followship? Is that a word? I don't know. We'll see. And he also highlights through optics, I believe, and a microgrant, Indigenous culture from all across Canada. And so we chat with him about his own personal journey and some neat things about his life, like starring in a movie, and also some harder times in his life through addiction. And it's a very good episode, and I'm so grateful that Braden took the time to sit down with me, and you can learn all about him in this episode. We just celebrated a couple of weeks ago our Choose Love and Join Hands and Truth and Reconciliation mural ceremony, and it was so amazing, and I had no air in my body to speak. It was just, I guess I was leaving space for the beauty of it all, and I just kept crying. So it was very powerful, seeing how our creative gifts can be something so much more than we ever anticipate they can be, and they can impact others in really, really big ways. And that's what I love about my creative passion, and stepping outside yourself and what creativity can mean to the world. But of course, it always starts with taking care of yourself first, in order for you to thrive in that space. And so when you're struggling from mental health, addiction, or anything like that, seeking care and making time for you is, of course, number one. And we touch on that in this episode, and we talk about that a lot in our book, and the basics and the foundation and the building blocks. You'll become stronger from those experiences, and they'll lead you further into your passion and your why, and your whole being, and the power that you have, because you are important. You're worth it in every way. You have gifts, and I'd love for you to share them with the world. And that's what we do this podcast for, is to encourage creatives to share in their passions and their gifts, and thrive in the world by supporting you. And that is what our Color Me Happy community is there for. So check that out. It's free, and I can't wait to chat with you all soon. You can reach out anytime at Brandi Hofer Studios on Instagram. I'm happy. I mostly answer messages there, and if I don't, I just missed it. So send me another one, because there were too many, and I opened it and forgot. 100%. That's what happened. It's never because I don't want to chat with you. So thank you again for your time, and we'll chat soon, my friend.
Yeah, I think it's hard to, it's so gig-based nowadays, the entertainment industry. And so, especially with film, you do it independently. Finding, especially well-paying gigs can be tough.
Yeah.
So we just had a micro grant, and so it worked out in our favor. We're still fairly young, so I'm a student still, and this was it was either Story Hive or go back to the government, and I didn't want to sit in an office again.
No, it's so, yeah, that kills like the spirit really hard,
Yeah, and
an office job.
we just moved to Calgary a year ago today. A year ago today, and so we didn't really get to explore, and so this job kind of forced us to explore. And so we got a never been to Lloydminster. I don't think I even had met anyone from Lloydminster beforehand, so it was super cool.
Yeah, it's a nice, like it's a special community. People just think like they judge it from the outside and passing through, and the people are what make it like really special. But I want to talk about you. I want to talk about, so first of all, like where were you born and raised?
Oh man, okay.
Yeah, right from the
So
beginning.
uh, my mom's a residential school survivor. She's from Nunavut. Her community, her home community, no longer exists. Weemakdok, and so I was born in Yellowknife. It was the closest, I guess.
Hospital.
Yeah, to Kogoktuk. And I lived there for 2.5 years, and then she met my dad early on, and then all three of us moved down to Liverpool, Nova Scotia, and to Bridgewater, Nova Scotia. So that was 6 years, and then we went back to Kogoktuk for 2 years, and then we were in Yellowknife again for 10 years. And then I started going. So I worked in a diamond mine for a bit. Well, I guess I was in a movie first. Then I was in a diamond mine, and then
You were in a movie.
Yeah, I had a little role in the film The Grizzlies. It's a Canadian. I guess it's on Netflix now. It was just a small role. I think you hear me speak once.
But still, so was that like the spark moment for you? Like, this is so cool, and you see everything working, you're like, I think I want to do that.
A little bit, mostly my mom never had a glass ceiling, and she didn't impose that on us either when we were growing up, me and my brothers. It was cool watching her growing up because she would want to do something and then she would just do it. There was no room for doubt. It was just, I'm just gonna do it. No second thoughts. And so I guess that's probably one of the biggest gifts she's passed on, I'd say. But the movie was cool though, because I took a semester off high school to be in it, and I had to choose that or volleyball because I had like
That's a
volleyball
tough
camps.
one.
And sorry, my cat.
That's okay.
And yeah, you know what? That might have been a bit of a spark because I was always bugging the tech workers and behind the scenes and asking all the questions about what was going on, and all that was fun. But what's cool about the movie is it's based on my hometown, Kogoktuk, and one of the characters is based on my father, Mike.
What?
Yeah,
That is really cool.
it was cool. And so Will Sasso played him. Not sure if you know him. He was man, back in the Vine day, he would do the lemon out of his mouth. Anyways, so I called him Dad. And it was cool because it's essentially was so Russ, the main character, known him since childhood, and hanging out with him on set was weird. Boo Boo, yeah, Boo Boo was stupid. Yeah. Anyways, the problem was though is I fell into addiction around that time period, and so
In high school?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was like 14, and so although I didn't have a glass ceiling, I was still your classic self-sabotager and whatnot. And so then I took a year off high school. Not high school, sorry. After high school, before going to university, and worked in a diamond mine for a bit, and figured the trades weren't for me. So then I went to the University of New Brunswick, and that's where everything kind of hit the fan. And I fell pretty hard, like deeper into the addiction. Moved back to Yellowknife for work. It was rough. Work was rough because there can be a lot of racism in Yellowknife. And so I experienced a lot
really?
of that. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Well, it's kind of like Woodminster in the sense that it borders a reserve, or not a reserve. I guess it's like indigenous community, and you immediately get to Yellowknife, so a little different. There's no 30-minute drive, and it's also the hub of the north, and so there's a lot. The houseless population per capita is one of the highest in Canada, and so it's interesting because it's amazing, but it's also awful at the same time. That makes
Is
sense.
there like a separatism that you can feel
Yeah,
there?
yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's still such a strong sense of community. So
Mm.
there's for I'd say like I think it's every 3 people that are super accepted, there's one who's just as powerfully opposed up there. But things might have changed. It's been a while since I've been there, like 4 years since I've lived there. And so I had quite a few negative experiences there as an adult. And there's a few catalytic events where my addiction just fell harder and harder. And I still made it back to school. That's where everything kind of fell. And I had a moment. One of my buddies calls them a God moment, where I was fading between like psychosis essentially, and the addiction, and then reality, and realizing if I didn't call my parents and ask for help, that was it. There was no more Braden, and I so I should have given you a trigger warning.
No, go for it. No, I thank you for sharing.
So I struggled with suicidal ideation, and there's a history of medically induced marijuana induced schizophrenia in my family, and that God moment where it was either I get help or I'm gone. And so thankfully I got help, called my parents, they took me in, no questions asked.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. And no, they gave me the room to heal, safe space. And I had difficulties reconnecting with my mom before all this because she had a lot of trauma she hadn't worked through. And she actually started her own healing journey that inspired, or I guess, opened the way for me to go on my own. And so it was through that me and my mother really connected. My father, we were always close. And then that also, so since I'm mixed, it's been hard to affirm my identity, especially there's a lot of lateral violence, especially in the northern communities. And so it was always tough with that growing up, but through sobriety, I was able to reconnect and affirm that identity. And that's where I found the creative spark, I guess, is through all that. I was writing, and I have a lot easier of a time expressing myself written as opposed to speaking. The ADHD and whatnot makes it hard to compose myself and articulate myself a little
How
bit.
can I put a full sentence together for everyone to understand what I'm thinking?
Yeah.
I hear that. That's when I have to speak. I'm like, I need to write it out a lot and then go from there.
Yeah.
Writing, it does help. It's such a useful tool.
Yeah.
It's for sorting thoughts and processing trauma and grief and everything, especially that you've been through.
Yeah, kind of it allows you to kind of put in the real world, I guess, thoughts that you don't feel comfortable maybe sharing with others. That was before, I got comfortable with therapy and whatnot. So it helped a lot.
And then like stepping into yourself and celebrating your culture, which you started doing online.
Yeah. Well, I guess I didn't get so. I went to
Tell the rest of your story, and then we'll talk about that, which I think is very neat.
Sure. So I went to rehab in a Mi'kmaq rehabilitation center, Eskasoni, Cape Breton. I spent my 21st birthday there, which was cool because I was actually supposed to go to Vegas with my mom. And then COVID hit. And so, I feel very lucky about COVID hitting in that time. I know a lot really struggled during like the lockdowns and whatnot, but in a way, it like everything stopped and I was able to, I feel, catch up. And so in those 2 years, I was able to really kind of peel back who it was that I was pretending to be and trying to be and figure out who it was that I was meant to be. And I didn't really do anything aside from like self-reflect and read and write a little poetry. And me and Rebecca met in that time. We met over Tinder. We were a bubble couple. And she really gave me confidence in creating, right? She was like a super safe space and helped with the confidence. And TikTok was just blowing up. And my mom, she got the Governor General's Award for accomplishment or achievement. Oh man, that was like 8 years ago now, 6 years ago, for her work in revitalizing traditional Inuit tattoos. And so she's like kind of like she's like a northern queen of sorts. She's like super looked up to in the northern communities. And so
what's your mom's name?
Huvuk Johnston. And so she's got a little book too. I forget what it's called, Lines of My Ancestors. And actually that's where my that's where my advocacy started. Was my mom made me a traditionally made sealskin parka. I posted it to Facebook, and PETA was in the middle of a big conflict with Inuit. Because Inuit never club seals or like mass harvests or anything. They were quintessential to the ways of life up north. And PETA kind of went on or they're still on this smear campaign of the demonization of Inuit traditional practices, but without taking into consideration the food insecurity and housing insecurity. And so I got involved in that when I was 17, and it was just a mess. But I didn't understand the weight of my words at that time, because when I jumped in, it was like the entire North kind of uplifted me. And so the global and like CTV news and all that whatnot were trying to get me to be on their shows, and I was just like, no, I'm 17, like I'm not in for this. And so that kind of carried forward into where I just was talking about social media. And I was trying to push my mom to do TikTok because I didn't really want to do it. I wasn't ready to speak or share my story and whatnot. And she cut a deal with me saying, if you do it with me, then I'll do it. And so we did it together for, I think, 2 months before I gave in. I was like, all right, like, fine, like, I'll make my own video. And it was kind of overnight. It just went, I shared a story. I think it was 2 years sober and 2 years, 2 months. And I shared about it. And then it just kind of blew up and turned into like an online journal. And then me and my mom shared various aspects of our culture, like food, tools, mostly language too, clothing. And then I kind of also had my own little segments of like sobriety. And then out of nowhere, it was like 138,000 followers. And it was just kind of like, holy smokes. So I took a huge break to kind of like be like, okay, if I picture that many people like I'm speaking to, like that's a lot of people in front of me. And so, although it's kind of like staggered in the way views work and whatnot. And so, yeah, that happened in like a year, like less than a year it was up there. So I didn't know what to do with it and whatnot. And yeah, so then we moved up to Calgary. I wanted to go back to school and finish what I started. Oh, we got engaged, sorry, before we moved up. And then
Congratulations.
Thank you. I want to get my PhD in philosophy. And so I'm in my third year back at my BA at UOC, working on that book. And then the TV series, yeah. So Rebecca was working for a YMCA, and she just got her BA in psychology. And she was feeling kind of stagnant. And I didn't know what I was going to do for the summer. And we saw that the story hype grant kept coming up on our Instagram. We actually applied a day late. We didn't realize it. And somehow got it. We were like, all right, let's figure this out. And it's probably one of the coolest things I think we've done. Super stressful, but just the two of us. And that's kind of where we're at now.
Where did that take you?
In like location wise?
No, your docu-series. Where did you go?
So we went to Canmore and Banff to do the Carter Ryan galleries. So the whole series was since I was the only Indigenous person in the whole program, we challenged ourselves to see if we could highlight as many Indigenous voices as we could. And so our goal was to demystify the Indigenous experience in Alberta and kind of bridge that gap of understanding between like Indigenous, non-Indigenous, and kind of be like, hey, like, we can find a mutual understanding and
coexist.
Yeah. And so we spent a lot of time in Calgary. We did an entire market one day. I think it was 18 interviews for an artist, and it was super cool. So everyone kind of had a different story, but they all had the same message. So it was neat. And we ended up with the Mohican Trails, which is in Sundre. They have a huge acreage for medicine trails and
oh wow,
like traditional tours and whatnot from like a crew perspective. We were in Lloydminster.
So how did you find Randy? Was that
Instagram.
social media? Just Instagram.
So we're in this Treaty 7 Facebook page, and we kind of just like scoped out through there because we were still so fresh. And after we interviewed like a couple, like it took a while for people to be like, okay, like I don't think they're a scam, like I think they're being real. And
which is hard. I was talking with a woman in Saskatoon who runs like mural events and festivals, and she's like, a lot of artists don't get back to me. I'm like, you don't understand. There's so many scammers that come after artists, unfortunately, with saying they have an opportunity for you. So a lot of people probably think you're just, I know, like she offered another mural for me. So like, I'm like, a lot of artists would have been like, that's not real. So yeah. I'm like, but then you emailed and Insta message. Then I knew it was like a real person. So yeah. It's hard. Yeah. So that's cool. That's how so the Heart of Treaty 7 Facebook page is how you found Randy?
No, I think it's called
most people.
Treaty 7. Oh man, I don't even know what it's called right now. But I actually
No,
think we
we're
found
Heart. Sorry, I called it our committee name. I'm so used to saying Heart of Treaty 6 that I
Oh,
just don't
okay.
put it in there. All treaties deserve a heart in front of them.
Yeah.
Um.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Calibrated
Yeah,
treaty
isn't
sensitive community.
yeah. Randy's wonderful. She has like the most amazing, playful spirit of like anyone I've ever met, but like really honest, which I appreciate.
Oh, it's fun getting to interview the two of you and watching your back and forth. You tell you really appreciate each other.
Yeah, yeah. But like honestly, uh meeting her and then just working with her the past couple years, like so many weird things happen that like you have to sit in the fact that like something else, like something greater was at work there. Like there were so many strange things. Even yesterday, I had stopped at the mural because we're going to clean it because it's really dirty in that area with the person. And Randy just happened to be driving by at the moment we were there. And then like so many signs, like from both of our mothers. And so yeah, it was just like it was such a crazy thing. And I feel like, there is something else that is, if you're listening, and that's what I love about learning about more about Indigenous culture is that um, you're listening so much more than everyone else, like, and respecting, and holding on to knowledge in the most beautiful way, and storytelling.
Absolutely. I'd say most of the indigenous cultures here in Canada, well, I guess in the States too, well, no, worldwide really are more interested. Actually, Clint was talking about it. I watched a video about it, about it's not just interacting with the physical world, it's like the spiritual and whatnot. Like physical world is just a manifestation of the spiritual. And it's kind of respecting both,
Mm-hmm.
in a sense.
Yeah. And the more I learn and the more people I meet, I feel so honored, and the kindness. And I'm proud to be an Indigenous ally. And Randy said I could be an honorary member. I was like, thank you so much. That's very nice of you.
It's an honor.
Yeah, honorary member. But I mean, I feel like it's so important, especially when you talked about and I could feel that growing up, but with your community growing up too, like you can feel it on both sides, the separatism. Like it's not just a one-sided thing. It's like, you feel like, as for me growing up, it's like, why is this happening? And I remember a conversation with my mother, like, why is this the way it is? And she's like, it just is. I'm like, well, how can we help? What do we do? And she's like, I'm not, like, she didn't know, right? Like she didn't know how to answer. She's like, I don't know. Like, and then obviously fast forward 25 years and I'm like, I can help with creativity. But it's just it is a helpless feeling on so many levels. And I think when we let down our guard and we let down of what we're being told or taught. And I remember a conversation with Randy, and she just was like, it's about, like, don't be afraid. She's like, definitely don't step into this with fear. Like, just, it's about building bridges between our communities, and it's okay to be an ally. Like, it's okay. I was like, okay. And I don't know why I need to be told that, but it's just, I guess so many people told me I couldn't, so I think it's yeah, a lot of conversations, and a lot of working together and reaching out and like trying to understand, which I don't think. And so I'm really proud of you both, because I know Rebecca's there, for opening up those conversation and raising raising Indigenous voices?
There's a lot of anger, I guess, on both sides, but
For sure. Yeah.
no one, like, which is valid, but there's a lot of tone policing and a lot of, I guess, like emotional policing too, in a sense, where no one wants to listen to an angry voice, and so the the, the approach has been trying to navigate that anger in a constructive sense
Hmm.
and get the messages relayed, but comfortably, if that makes, I don't know if that
Right.
makes. So,
Right. But if you've been through trauma, like it's hard not to come out of, and I've experienced trauma. It's hard to not come out of. It takes years to let go of anger. Like it really does. Stepping out of it, like it's, I remember just being so mad all the time, you know? So I can't even speak to generational trauma, like what that feels like.
I think I had a switch flip uh, a few times. There was a few, like, I guess, of those God moments or switch flips where I was really angry at my mother for a long time and other abusers, and I uh, I don't even know how it happened. I think it was we were giving a speech at the National Truth and Reconciliation event in Mississauga, and we were speaking on generational trauma and residential school. And so she gave her story, and then I gave like the generational effect, and I it just clicked. Though it was like, okay, like you your ang- your anger shouldn't be directed towards your mother. It should be directed at the system that um, in turn hurt your mother. And so your mother was just like
A
there was bigger
victim
things
of
at play.
circumstance. She was a victim of circumstance,
Yeah, and
of
so
systemic racism. Yeah.
and so I kind of let my anger kind of disappeared towards people in that sense, and just towards the system. And so with the show, a lot of these people that we interviewed, I had met through like advocacy online, and most of them kept telling me like, if you weren't Indigenous, I would have charged you so much and whatnot. Like if you were just like I didn't see you as like a nephew, and because they've been through a lot of themselves, and there's a lot of tokenizing, especially in Calgary, or I guess Alberta, of you know using Indigenous storytellers and not compensating them for their emotional work and or emotional labor. Sorry, it's super common actually, and so and especially too, it can be hard to tiptoe those tough conversations, and you know, uh, with all the trauma, like it can be easy to trigger too, and so our approach was like I was just the audience, so I knew a lot of the answers to most of the questions I was asking, but it wasn't about me telling them; it was about everyone else, right? And getting different answers and perspectives to all the important questions that kind of led to the same goal, like that understanding and whatnot. And so you don't see a lot of young Indigenous men kind of taking up space. It's usually Indigenous women. Well, I'd say like 9 times out of 10. And so they're our trailblazers. So I'm just kind of trying to come and help hold that space, I guess. I think I answered it. I think I went the right way. I'm not sure. I kind of circled.
That's okay. Thank you. I imagine that takes a lot of patience and energy.
Yeah, it's definitely been a process. I guess patience has definitely been something I've learned to practice. It's not perfect, but
I'm sure it will get better with age. Like, how old are you?
24.
Yeah, you're so little still.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not super old or anything, but I've got a few years on you. And like, you're very, I mean, it sounds like you've experienced a lot and you've come out of a lot. And I feel like every season of life is meant to strengthen you and prepare you for your next step. And so you came out of a lot of things, you know, stronger and but in a beautiful sense of like self-worth, and I'm important and my voice is important. And not only that, but like I want to help others through what I've learned, and who I am, which I find very inspiring. So thank you.
Yeah, it's been
Sorry, go ahead.
no, it was not that. I was just saying
No.
been interesting.
So so what is the reaction? I'm sure you get a lot of different reactions because it is very with the raw meat on your social. Like, is that a very popular? Because
It's the
so
most popular.
Yeah, I noticed that. It's so so yeah, talk about that a little bit.
Well, there's this idea that, you know, colonization happened so long ago, but for the Inuit, it was relatively recent in the sense that, so uh, in Canada, the homeland of the Inuit is referred to as Inuit Nunagat. So Inuit meaning people, and Nunagat meaning homeland. So the people's homeland. And the first land claim agreement for the Inuit was signed in, I want to say 1999. Yeah, April 1st, 1999. Excuse me. For Nunavut. And the last one was 2005, Nunavut in Labrador. And so our area in Canada is the Inuvialuit, which is the Northwest Territories, Nunavik, which is Quebec, and then Labrador. But traditionally, you would find us in Alaska and Greenland as well, and then I believe Russia. Yeah, because Diomede Island is in Russia. And so it's very vast and super isolated in northern, well, I guess it's the northernmost part of the world, essentially. And we were signed into the Indian Act briefly and then taken out, but the government didn't know what to do with us. They wanted to ignore us until around the 1940s. And so then they came up and e-tags or numbers were given instead of names because the names were too confusing. And my grandpa has one. And then, so that program ran until 1978. And then through that, the government and the RCMP came up and started relocating communities to more barren lands and disrupted the way of life and slaughtered the dogs and moved them away from the caribou. So this happened through the mid 70s, from the 50s to the 70s. And the last residential school closed up there 1997, right in Inlet, Kivalliq Hall, which actually
All the
isn't
way
the
to
last
97.
one.
Oh my gosh.
I just found out there was one in 98 in Saskatchewan. Led Brett Hall. There's weird there's just legislation that like allows them to kind of mark the years differently. If that makes sense. And so I'm not too well read on the 98 one, but the one in 97, yeah. So yeah, my mom went and through the displacement and the harsh climates, Inuit traditionally lived this semi-nomadic life, but without the dogs and the new locations, it's next to impossible to build homes and get food up there. And so a box of cereal now can go for like $20 in the community. And so Um, it's hunting is still a huge part of life in the sense that it's still for survival in a lot of these communities.
Right.
And so the food insecurity there is a massive problem. And yeah, so caribou will feed 5 or 6 families most times, four to five families. And
Mm.
there's obviously no fires up there. Well, I mean, they had kozaks, which were lamps, but you can really have a fire without trees because we're all above the tree line, except at the Uni Valley, the tree line. And so raw meat, right? Like it's just frozen, but it's not farmed.
Just that's all you have, I guess, right?
Yeah, there's some berries, but there's a lot of so the whale that we would eat is super rich in vitamin E and a few others, and seal like liver. There's lots of livers, and
So it's necessity.
yeah,
Yeah, a necessity of life.
and so there's a lot of ignorance. There's a lot of obviously like curiosity
Yeah.
and misunderstanding in the sense that a lot of people think we're just going to the butcher shop and getting cow and eating a cow raw, but I wouldn't recommend that. It's not, we don't eat farm feed or.
I was in Paris for like an art residency, and my mom met me with her friend, and we were at Musée d'Orsay, and he ordered a big thing of ground raw beef and raw egg, and I was like, you're gonna regret it. I feel like that's a bad choice. And he's
Yeah.
like, because you're like, no, I'm experiencing French culture, and he had it lots before, but he definitely, yeah, I would recommend a big thing of raw anything either, like especially ground up.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was definitely so sick, but I feel like over time, like obviously, if that's what you're eating, that's what you eat, like, and your system can take it. But yeah, I would definitely also would not recommend anything anything raw like that, unless you're having, of course, like fresh sashimi or whatever in a good spot.
Exactly.
People have it here in Alberta, and I'm like, no,
It's tricky.
pass.
Well, what's funny is that there was that's super trendy, that like primitive lifestyle. Like there was a big guy, his name was Liver King, and their whole shtick was like oh man, what did he say? He's like living like a barbarian. Was his whole thing of like just eating like just the strangest raw meat you could. Well, I guess it wouldn't be strange to some people, but it was obviously like for clicks and for like attention. And so a lot of those primitive lifestyle people ended up kind of swarming my comments and my messages, being like, "Hey, like, I'm trying to adopt this primitive lifestyle. Like, what's your diet? Like, what's your
Oh
opinion
my
on like
gosh.
raw chicken?" And I'm like, "Man, I would not touch raw chicken."
Raw chicken.
It's pretty absurd, some of the messages I get, right, in the sense for food, but like
I
the
guess you just have to take it with like, like a grain of salt, like just nothing. You're just like, oh, okay, or just not answer at all.
oh I don't entertain it usually. It's it, the question of entertaining someone who's like equates, like a well and alive thriving lifestyle to primitive is kind of, it's that's where the patience gets tested a little bit.
For sure.
So,
Yeah, I understand that for sure, especially when it's like it's such a huge part of necessity and just like a way of life. And so good for you for having the patience and sharing it, even though like, and not stopping, because that's what you get sometimes when you're vulnerable and you share parts of yourself.
my whole thing is like, um, Inuit, you know, you kind of get left out of the conversation sometimes in the sense that, like, how many people know what an Inukshuk is, but don't know the Inuit, or know what an igloo is, or don't know the Inuit, or know like sunglasses too, or Inuit and mukluks. And there's quite a few things, right? And so I figure, you know, I got this platform, I might as well try use it to kind of how I view it in the right way, I guess. If I were to look at it objectively, I'd hope I'd be, um, handling myself in the appropriate manner.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it was from, there was this show, it's called What We Do in the Shadows. It's like a documentary of vampires, and there's an energy vampire actually in it, and it's really funny. And he, obviously feeds off people, making them mad. And, um, there's an episode where he figures out how to troll people online, and that he can feed off people that he's trolling. And
Oh
so
no.
watching that, I used to get caught up in the comments all the time. And, it was watching that show that kind of it put into perspective. So whenever I get a negative comment, his name's Colin Robinson, and now it's a Colin Robinson, and so help me.
Yeah, for sure. I can't wait. You said you wanted to you'd been writing and wanting to do a book.
Yeah, so I'm pretty close to done. I emailed Deborah there. We were setting up a date to do a little Zoom. She hasn't got back to me about that part yet, but we'll see. So it's essentially a reflection of my journey, but a deep dive. It's going to be, I think it's only going to be about 30, 40 pages, I think. And it's kind of I'd say it's more similar to like those ancient texts of like Epictetus or Marcus Aurelius, the Tao Te Ching, or Confucius, the Analects. So it's just like a collection of sayings after the reflection that help keep me grounded through. So I call it like my gentle reminders, and I reflect on those as well, about how they helped keep me grounded through sobriety and figuring out who I was. I couldn't really connect with AA. I really respect it and all those who use it, but I found it kind of took away my own accomplishments from sobriety in a sense. So the book itself is kind of um, centered around the little wins and appreciating like the little things. And yeah, in a sense, just 20, 30 pages, super simple. And yeah, it's going well. Let's see.
Great. Yeah. I'll get my hands on it once it comes out, and then we can talk again.
Sure, yeah.
Be great. And I think that's good. It's like, then it's a tool for other people, right? It's something like I love picking up things daily that I can just like center myself first thing in the morning or last thing at night, right? Like it's like a gentle reminder, like you said. It's like that we're here and we're all in this together, experiencing these moments and processing them and trying to communicate them in our humanness. So,
Yeah.
but I appreciate your time so much, and it was lovely to see you again, and we'll chat soon. Do you want to let everyone know where they can find you?
Yeah, sure. At Braden Kadlun, BradenKadlun on Instagram, and just Kadlun on TikTok and YouTube. Yeah.
Great. Well, I'm sure this is not the last time we'll speak, so we'll chat soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that episode. And of course, we are acknowledging that we are on Treaty 6 territory, and we are acknowledging truth and reconciliation all across our nation. And I'm so honored to be able to, first of all, be a part of our Heart of Treaty 6 Truth and Reconciliation Committee, working toward truth and reconciliation in our community. And actually, if you're listening and you are local to Lloydminster, it is an open, safe circle, and it's full of passionate, wonderful individuals. And if you'd like to become part of it and practice truth and reconciliation, and we talk a lot about more than that, and how we can positively impact our community. And our gala's coming up, which is really exciting, and I will be doing some artwork there and helping raise money for Heart of Treaty 6. So there are so many ways that you can make a difference, and through your creativity. And I always thought, like, how could, like, first of all, like, it started with self-worth, and that was a really long journey for me. And it started with, oddly enough, money mindset books. They talk about self-worth a lot, and it's so important in order for you to thrive in any sort of way. Or so that is like number one. It's like you can't expand if you don't believe you're worth it in the first place. So it took a lot of years shaking off kind of old habits, old ways of being, and old mindset, and to know. And I remember I created a mantra. Jen Sincero, I think it was her Badass Habits book, and I like had this weird, which I talk about in my own book. I tell this story of creating my mantra, I think. If not, I gave a motivational speech about it and wrote about it, and that I was doing so much I can't remember what is what. But anyway, I was like, I bought these sheets from Winners, and it was like blizzarding, and the sheets ended up being like terrible. So I'm like, oh, I should take these back to Winners, but it's blizzarding out, and should I? I'm like, but I really need new sheets. And so I ended up leaving at 8 at night, which I never do anyway because I'm too tired, and helping put kids to bed. But I was like, I'm just gonna go return these sheets, bye. And I was listening to Jen's book, her audiobook, and she was talking about creating your mantra. And I just sat there and I was like, okay, create a mantra, whatever. Okay, cool, Jen. And I went into Winners and HomeSense, that's right, same thing, really, decor store, HomeSense. And I went in to get the new sheets, and it was mask times, and plus snowstorm, so I was like fully covered in a mask and a toque and a scarf and the whole deal. No one, unrecognizable really. And this woman who I didn't know, she was from my high school, and it was hard to tell because people change, and she was wearing a mask. And she was like push booming past me, and she stopped and looked at me, and she's like, Brandi, hey. I was like, hey. And she's like, I've got to tell you, every time I drive past your one mural, it brings me so much joy. Thank you for doing that in our community. And I was like, oh, okay, thank you. Thank you for saying that. That's so very sweet and kind of you. And I got in my car and I was like, my creativity is worthy and powerful. And I just kept saying that over and over and over again when I would doubt myself, or I would wake up and feel like I wasn't worth it, or why was I doing all of this stuff? Like, why was I creating art and it wouldn't sell, and it would show in a gallery, and it would come home, and I would ship it. Now I'm going to start crying. I would ship it places, and it would get sent back for more than the art was even worth. And it was just like no after no after no, discouraging thing after discouraging thing, and I would focus on that. And until I realized that sometimes some stuff doesn't work, and sometimes stuff does work, and we don't know why. But each time you do, there's a lesson in it. You become stronger, you become more resilient, your skin becomes thicker, you become smarter from that experience. You walk away stronger and like a better, bigger person. And then things start like gravitating toward you, and then you're strong enough to take on those bigger things, because the good and the bad kind of just live together, and that's the way it is. There will never, every day is a mixed bag. I love this analogy because some people like raisins, but I do not. Neither does my husband. Anyways, every day is a really big mixed bag of nuts, and sometimes you'll get those dried up raisins that you're like, blah. Just pick them out and move on. and that's it. Like, and then the rest are crunchy, amazing cashews or chocolate, right? I don't even know if that's a good analogy of life. I'm so tired. But the big moments, the cool stuff, the tiny moments in each and every day are what is leading you to an extraordinary life. There, I was wondering why I wasn't interrupted yet, because I'm at home. All right. Stay cool, my friends, and thank you to our community partners, BioClean Disaster Services, Red Bicycle Communications, Oasis and Hot Yoga Studio, Nouveau Laser and Aesthetic Center. Oasis, we have our upcoming workshop, yoga and art. Trusting your intuition. So there'll be snacks, there'll be yoga, there'll be good tea, there'll be, we're making really sweet circle panels. Nothing's within arm's reach, but I'll put it in the notes. Check that out if you're local. We can't wait to make art with you.
If you're looking for some time for yourself to relax, release, and unwind, Oasis has the perfect space for you. They offer yoga and spin classes of all levels. Whether you are a beginner or advanced student, Oasis thrives on accommodating all aspects of the practice. Let their serene environment and gracious staff help you in your journey of peace, healing, and strength. Sign up online at www.oasishotyogastudio.com or by downloading the Oasis Hot Yoga Studio app. Feel like yourself. You deserve it.